The stars over the Pacific Ocean were the first to vanish. One by one, points of light were swallowed by a dark, angular mass that blotted out the constellations. It was not a smooth arrival, but a violent intrusion, a tear in the fabric of the night sky that resolved into a fleet of ships. They were silent, geometric, and shimmered with a cold internal light like captured moonlight on ice. The Vesperian hegemony had come to Sol. On Earth, panic was a delayed reaction. The first few hours were filled with wonder, then confusion. Astronomers and military trackers locked onto the 100 vessels now in high orbit, their data streams converging into a single terrifying conclusion. This was not a probe. This was an Armada dot in a command bunker buried deep beneath the mountains of the Korean peninsula. The air was not filled with panic, but with a tense, humming quiet. The walls were lined with screens, each showing a different facet of the global chaos. News feeds, orbital trajectories, and the frantic political channels of a suddenly unified and terrified United Earth Council. At the center of the room stood Commander Lee. Lee was a man who looked carved from the same granite that surrounded his bunker. His hair was short and gray, his face lined not with age, but with the weight of decisions not yet made. He watched the main screen, which displayed the clearest image they had of the lead Vesperian ship. It was a jagged spire, beautiful and alien. "They are hailing all frequencies," a young officer named Tay reported, his voice tight. "Audio and visual. It's repeating." "Put it on," Lee said. His voice was low, a calm in the eye of the storm. The screen changed. The being that appeared was unlike anything from Earth. Its form seemed to be made of shifting, translucent crystal, with light pulsing gently within its core. It had no discernible face, but a cluster of fine glowing filaments where one might expect eyes. When it spoke, its voice was synthesized, smooth, and utterly devoid of emotion. It was the sound of a glacier announcing its presence. "People of Earth," the voice began, echoing in the silent bunker. "We are the Vesperian hegemony. Your system lies within a zone of space now under our governance. Your species shows preliminary signs of sentience. You are offered a place within the hegemony as a client species. You will surrender all planetary and extraplanetary sovereignty to us. You will comply with all directives for resource management and population control. Your military and spacefaring assets will be disbanded. You have one of your planetary rotations to signal global acceptance. Failure to comply will result in orbital purification of your major population centers. There will be no further communication." The message ended. The crystalline figure vanished, replaced once more by the ominous view of the ship. In the bunker, the silence was heavier than before. Lee did not move. He had known, from the moment the first anomalous gravity wave was detected weeks ago, that this was a possibility. For decades, a secret branch of Earth's defense, the United Earth Defense Directorate, had been preparing for a moment that most believed would never come. They called it the Gray Sky Protocol. Lee turned from the screen. His eyes found two people in the room. The first was Dr. Kung Ji, his chief scientific advisor. She was in her 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes that were now scanning the alien message's data signature on a separate tablet. The second was Field Commander Park Jun, a man built like a bull, with a scar running down his jaw and a stillness that spoke of controlled violence. "They didn't even scan our planetary networks," Lee said, his words cutting through the quiet. He pointed to a secondary monitor showing global internet traffic, which was spiking wildly but still flowing. No deep probe, no attempt to access our databases. They saw a world with nation-states, with political strife on the news channels they doubtless intercepted, and they assumed weakness. They assumed disunity. Jun grunted, his arms crossed. "They think we will fight each other for the privilege of surrendering first. They are logical, But their logic is arrogant, Ji said, looking up from her tablet. Her voice was calm, analytical. The message structure is absolute. Binary choice. Surrender or annihilation. It is the same message they have likely delivered to dozens of species before us. A template. They expect the template to hold. On the global comes, the voices of Earth's political leaders began to filter in, a cacophony of fear. Some pleaded for immediate negotiation, some for a defiant but hopeless resistance. Others simply sounded lost. Lee walked to his command console. He placed his palm on a biometric scanner. A soft chime sounded, and a new set of interfaces lit up, glowing a soft red. This was the Gray Sky System, a network of hidden assets, dormant technologies, and contingency plans known only to a few hundred people on the planet. Tay, Lee said, his voice now carrying the full weight of command. Cut the bunker off from all external political channels. They are no longer relevant. Dr. Kong, your analysis? Ji stood up. Their ships are emitting a low-level harmonic resonance. It's like a fingerprint. Their technology, their very biology, seems to be crystalline and frequency-based. It is a potential vulnerability. More importantly, their broadcast was a one-way data dump. They are not listening, Commander. They are only speaking. A grim smile touched Lee's lips. It was not a pleasant sight. Good. They are deafened by their own superiority. He looked at Jun. Field readiness? Jun nodded once. The hidden divisions are on standby. The rail batteries are powered and masked. The fighter silos are operational. We are scattered, hidden, and ready. But, Commander, we are a needle against a hammer. Their ships are in orbit. We are on the ground. We are on the home ground, Jun, Lee corrected him. They are in an environment they do not understand, fighting an enemy they do not respect. He turned to face the room, his gaze sweeping over the officers who had trained for this in secret for years. The Vesperians see a planet of quarreling tribes. They do not see the history. They do not see a species that learned to thrive in deserts and tundra, that clawed its way from the mud to the stars, that has spent its entire existence perfecting the art of war against itself. Our savagery is our secret weapon. He took a deep breath. Activate the Gray Sky Protocol. Phase 1. Deception. We acknowledge their message. We play for time. We feed them the chaos they expect to see. Phase 2. Analysis. Dr. Kong, you have 24 hours to find me a crack in their crystal armor. Phase 3. Preparation. Jun, your forces are now at Condition 1, but you will hold. You will not fire a single shot until I give the order. Lee turned back to the main screen, to the glittering silent fleet that hung over his world like a chandelier of doom. The fear in the room had not vanished, but it had been joined by something else, a focused, simmering resolve. They came expecting a surrender ceremony, Lee said, almost to himself. They thought they would be met with governors and treaties. He looked at the frozen image of the alien commander. Instead, they rang the doorbell of a hive. And now they will meet the sting. He pressed a button on his console. A recording light glowed. His voice, when he spoke, was carefully modulated to sound weary, resigned, the voice of a defeated diplomat. This is Commander Lee of United Earth to the Vesperian hegemony. We acknowledge your generous offer. The complexity of global consensus requires time. We request a 48-hour period to finalize planetary administrative cohesion and present a unified response. We await your confirmation. He sent the message. In the bunker, they waited, the seconds stretching out. The reply came in less than a minute. A single clipped word from the Vesperian ship. Acknowledged. The alien channel closed. In the bunker, Lee let out a slow breath. The hook was set. The first move in a war for survival had been made, not with a weapon, but with a lie. The Vesperians saw it as a delay of the inevitable. Lee saw it as the first fraying thread in their enemy's arrogance. Outside, the world trembled in fear. Down in the bunker, the war had already begun. The Vesperian High Commander, a being known as Valstren, watched the human response on his chamber's viewing field. The organic creature's face was lined with tension. Its voice carried a tone of weary submission. The request for 48 hours was a minor annoyance, a procedural delay his logic matrix deemed irrelevant. The outcome was absolute. He had delivered the ultimatum to 17 species before this one. 6 had surrendered immediately. 10 had required a brief, punishing orbital strike on a population center to illustrate the futility of resistance. 1 had foolishly fought and was now a fading memory. Its world a quiet, mined-out husk. They seek to organize their capitulation, his tactical integrator. A lesser crystal being named Crix stated, "Their social structures appear chaotic. The delay is logical for them." "It is inefficient," Valstren replied, the light within his form pulsing with mild irritation. "But it changes nothing. Maintain the fleet in geostationary alignment over their primary continents. Scan for any concentrated energy signatures that match primitive weapon profiles. Observe their communication networks for signs of coordinated military resistance." The scans revealed little. The humans' most powerful energy signatures came from their crumbling fission power plants and scattered scientific projects. Their military satellites were simple kinetic seal devices and observation platforms, no match for Vesperian shields. Their planet-wide network, however, was a screaming torrent of data. Billions of voices, images, and signals crashed against each other in a chaotic digital sea. It was noise, unfiltered, emotional, and useless. Valstren found it distasteful. He ordered a passive monitoring feed and turned his attention to cataloging the planet's mineralogical assets. The 48 hours would pass quickly. On Earth, those hours were not spent on surrender. They were spent on the greatest and most desperate feat of digital warfare in human history. In her lab deep within the bunker, Dr. Kongji worked with red-rimmed eyes. Her team, and thousands like them across the globe, had one mission: to weaponize chaos. They are listening. But they are not understanding, she explained to Commander Lee and Field Commander Jun in a hurried briefing. Her screens were a cascade of code and frequency graphs. Their AI, their entire way of processing information, it is based on pattern recognition and logical hierarchy. It seeks order. Our world's data is not orderly. Jun frowned. So we send them encrypted battle plans? False ship schematics? No, Ji said, a strange smile on her face. That is still order. That is a lie they could analyze and decode. We must send them truth. But human truth. She pulled up examples. We send them every religious text from every faith at the same time. We send them 10,000 years of art cave paintings next to abstract sculptures. We send them our entire history of warfare, from stone axes to nuclear missiles, with no context or timeline. We send them our fiction, our movies about alien invasions, our novels about wars in space, our comic books. We send them billions of social media posts, arguments about sports, recipes, personal dramas, jokes they cannot possibly comprehend. Lee leaned forward, beginning to see it. We overwhelm their pattern recognition. We give their analytical engines a nervous breakdown, Ji confirmed. We are broadcasting it all on every frequency they are monitoring: radio, microwave, even pulsed through old fiber optic cables we know they cannot physically tap. It is a digital tsunami of everything that makes us human. The sublime and the ridiculous, the profound and the profane, all mixed together with no filter. Across the planet, the operation unfolded. Satellite arrays normally used for weather and television began pumping out compressed data bursts. Deep-sea communication cables carried pulses of information to coastal transmission points. Old number stations, long silent, crackled back to life with streams of binary poetry and historical stock market figures. The content was not crafted by a single hand. It was dumped from libraries, archives, and servers in a raw, unfiltered deluge. In orbit, the Vesperian monitoring AI, known as the Cognitor, began its work. At first, it sorted efficiently. It categorized the humans' primitive energy readings. It flagged their orbital assets. Then the data wave hit. The Cognitor was designed to analyze military deployments, technological capabilities, and political hierarchies. It was not designed to process the emotional confession of a teenager, the symbolic narrative of a religious parable, the impossible physics of a science fiction film presented as documentary footage, and a technical schematic for a toaster. All received simultaneously. Its processes began to slow. Contradictions piled up. Was this species a peaceful, spiritual one based on one data stream, or a hyper-violent, militaristic one based on another? Were their leaders the political figures giving speeches, or the charismatic individuals with millions of followers discussing inane topics? The AI tried to establish a baseline for human normal and failed utterly. It began creating conflicting threat assessments. Warning flags about primitive kinetic weapons were filed alongside notes about widespread belief in supernatural punitive deities, and reverence for artistic depictions of self-destruction. Crix reported to Valstren halfway through the human delay period. Cognitor is reporting anomalies in the data stream. The species' informational output is highly disordered. It is interfering with clear analysis. Is there evidence of military mobilization? Valstren asked, his light pulsing steadily. The Cognitor has flagged 14,000 potential mobilizations. From large vehicle movements they call rush hour to concentrated thermal signatures in facilities, labeled sports stadiums. It cannot distinguish ritual from preparation. Its certainty metrics are falling. Valstren dismissed it. Organic disorder. When we impose structure, the noise will cease. Maintain watch for energy weapons or mass launch signatures. Ignore the cultural static. Below, the humans were doing far more than broadcasting noise. While G's digital onslaught provided the smokescreen, Chun's forces were moving. From hidden silos in mountain ranges, in deep forest canopies, under the ice of glaciers, and on the seabed, platforms rose. They were not sleek starships. They were rugged, angular, and built for atmosphere. Railgun batteries powered up, capacitors humming with stored charge. Launch tubes filled with single-pilot attack craft, more like winged bullets than traditional aircraft. Lee monitored it all from the bunker. The world's governments, still largely in the dark, were a chorus of panic and speculation. He let them chatter. His network, the Gray Sky Protocol, was a ghost in the machine, moving pieces on a board only he could see as the final hours of the deadline approached. The Vesperian Cognitor suffered a critical error. Trying to correlate a transmitted epic poem about a tragic war with a lay feed of a chaotic but peaceful protest, and a historical documentary about the development of ballistic missiles. It experienced a cascade failure in its predictive subroutines. It sent a priority alert to the fleet. Species behavior model invalid. Threat projection indeterminate. Recommend full spectrum sensor recalibration. The alert flashed on Valstren's screen. He felt a flicker of something unfamiliar, a precursor to doubt. It was illogical. The creatures were pre-stellar, divided, and soft. Their data was mere noise. He dismissed the alert. The 48 hours were up. It was time to collect the surrender or deliver punishment. The template would hold. On Earth, Commander Lee looked at the clock. The requested time was over. He had not spent it forging a surrender document. He had spent it forging a weapon made of confusion and a shield made of secrets. The Vesperians were waiting for a delegation of governors. They were about to receive something else entirely. Lee nodded to G. Cease the broadcast. Switch to standard diplomatic channels. He then turned to Jun. Stand by. They will show us what they consider punishment. Then we will show them our reply. The silent, glittering fleet above awaited a signal of submission. Below, the planet held its breath, a hive waiting for the first blow to fall, every sting poised and ready. The Vesperians had listened to human chaos and called it weakness. They were about to learn that chaos was not an absence of order, but a different kind of order, one they could not control. Valstren did not receive a surrender. The diplomatic channel from the human bunker remained silent. The 48 hours had passed with no further communication. A cold, logical anger solidified within him. The template had a response for this. The organics required a demonstration. A single surgical strike to erase a symbol of their defiance and civilization. He selected a target from the cognitor's pre-collapse analysis, a dense population center with high cultural and administrative significance. The city called Seoul. On the flagship's command platform, Valstren gave the order. A single spear-like vessel at the fleet's edge detached. It moved with silent purpose, aligning itself over the Korean peninsula. An aperture opened on its underside, glowing with a contained blue-white energy. This was a purifier beam, designed to vaporize military infrastructure and shatter the will to resist with minimal collateral damage to planetary resources. Below, millions of people looked up as the sky began to hum. In the bunker, alarms screamed a different kind of warning. Energy spike. Orbital weapon charging. Tay yelled, his voice cutting through the tension. Commander Lee stood perfectly still, his eyes fixed on the tactical map. Dr. Kong, is the shield network ready? Ji, who had not slept in 2 days, gave a sharp nod. The entire peninsula is covered. The harmonics are stable. We can't hold it forever, but we can hold against that. Hold against what? A direct hit from an orbital cannon? Jun growled, his hands clenched. We should be launching. Not yet, Lee said, his voice quiet but absolute. We let them throw the first punch. We let them see it fail. High above, the Vesperian spearship released its energy. A beam of devastating light, capable of melting a mountain, lanced down toward the heart of Seoul. The city below braced for annihilation. It never came. 100 kilometers above the surface, the beam struck something invisible. The sky rippled like water, flashing with a kaleidoscope of colors, deep blues, purples, and silvers. The energy did not penetrate. Instead, it spread out across the invisible barrier, dissipating in a spectacular silent aurora that lit up the daytime sky. On the ground, people stared in shock and awe, their faces painted in the light of the shield they never knew existed. On the Vesperian flagship, the tactical display flashed with unexpected data. Crix turned his crystalline form toward Valstren, his internal light flickering with confusion. The energy discharge was diffused. There is an unknown energy barrier surrounding the target zone. It absorbed 97% of the purifier's output. Valstren's core pulsed with a hot, angry light. A shield? A planetary shield technology was a hallmark of a mature stellar species, not these primitives. Scan it, find its source and its limits. Before new orders could be carried out, the human response began. It was not a message. It was an attack. From the mountains east of Seoul, from hidden valleys and camouflaged silos, 100 streaks of fire and smoke tore into the sky. They were not missiles as the Vesperians understood them. They were kinetic projectiles, launched from massive electromagnetic rails buried in the earth. They carried no warheads, just dense, solid rods of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of the speed of light. They rose silently, without engine heat, invisible to standard thermal scans until atmospheric friction made them glow. The Vesperian point defense systems, designed to intercept plasma bolts and guided missiles, were slow to react. The projectiles were too fast, too simple. Several struck the spear ship that had fired the beam. They did not explode. They punched straight through the crystalline hull like bullets through glass, leaving neat, clean holes that spat out atmosphere and fragmented internal systems. The ship listed, its lights sputtering, and began a slow deadfall from orbit. At the same time, the sky came alive with smaller, agile signatures. Human attack craft. They were unlike any fighter in the Vesperian database. They were sleek, angular things with sharp wings, launched from high-altitude platforms and boosted by scramjets. They flew in unpredictable, darting patterns, not in formal formations. Pilots like Captain Kim Min and Lieutenant Park Soo led the swarm, their voices calm in each other's headsets. "Fox 3, brake left, brake left. He's got a tone." Sue called out, banking her craft hard as a Vesperian interceptor tried to lock onto her. Her craft, call sign Reaper 2, vanished from the alien sensors for a crucial second as its radar-absorbent skin and jamming suite activated. Min, in Reaper 1, saw his opening. "I see him, firing." He didn't use an energy weapon. His craft spat a stream of high-velocity armor-piercing rounds. They chewed into the interceptor's delicate sensor array, blinding it. Confused, the alien ship tried to turn, colliding with another in its own squadron. Both became spiraling fireballs. On the ground, Chun's forces met the first Vesperian ground assault. The aliens had deployed drop pods into the Tayback Mountains, expecting to secure the shield generator they now detected. What they found was a labyrinth of rock and anger. The Vesperian soldiers moved in rigid, precise units, their crystalline bodies reflecting the sun, their weapons firing precise beams of cutting light. They expected to fight soldiers in uniform. They were met by squads in adaptive camouflage that mimicked the rock and trees around them. They were hit by swarms of small, explosive drones that buzzed like insects. They walked into simple, brutal trap pits with sharpened stakes, directional mines made from leftover artillery shells. The humans did not stand and fight. They ambushed, vanished, and ambushed again from a different direction. A Vesperian unit would be pinned down by sniper fire from a ridge, only to have a soldier rise from a camouflaged hide 5 meters away and disable them with a resonant frequency. Grenade G's team had hastily developed a device that emitted a shrieking sound wave tuned to shatter their crystalline joints. The battle was not one fight, but 1,000 small, vicious skirmishes. The Vesperians, used to wars of fleet maneuver and set-piece battles, were lost. Their logic could not process an enemy that used the terrain as a weapon, that considered retreat a valid tactic, that fought with such terrifying, personalized ferocity. Back in orbit, Valstren watched the tactical displays unravel. A ship was lost. Fighters were being downed by primitive kinetics. Ground units were reporting heavy casualties against an enemy they could not fully engage. The Cognitor, still reeling from the data assault, offered no clear strategy. The template was broken. All vessels. Valstren commanded, his light flashing violently. Break geostationary hold. Assume defensive formation. Target those ground-based launchers and eliminate them. But the human launchers were already retracting, sliding back into their mountain hides. The fighters, low on fuel, were disengaging and streaking back to hidden bases. The ground forces had melted back into the landscape, The communication channel from the human bunker finally activated. Commander Lee's face appeared on the screen. He looked calm. There was no fear, no pleading. Only a steady, cold resolve. "Vesperian Commander," Lee said, "you offered us two choices. Surrender or annihilation. You were wrong. There was always a third choice." Valstren did not respond. He severed the link. Below, the shield over Sol flickered and died, its energy reserves depleted for now. But the point was made. The city stood intact. The first blow had been struck by the aliens, and it had failed. The first counterblow by humanity had drawn blood. Lee looked around the bunker at the tired, triumphant faces. They had just won the first battle. He felt no joy, only a grim certainty. The Vesperians were hurt, confused, and angry. The next move would not be a single spearship. It would be the hammer. "Phase 1 is complete," Lee said to his team. "They know we can fight. Now they will try to learn how we fight." "Dr. Carl, what did we learn about them?" G pulled up data from the skirmish. "Their reactions are predictable. Their technology is powerful, but brittle. And their resonance signature is clearer than ever. I think I know how to break it." Outside, the sky was scarred with the trails of fire and the fading aurora. The war was no longer a concept. It was real. And Earth had just proven it was not a prize to be taken, but a hive that could sting. The stalemate was a fragile, humming thing. The Vesperian fleet no longer hung like a chandelier, but coiled like a serpent in high orbit, maintaining a wary distance. The single fallen spearship was a silent tomb in the Sea of Japan, a shocking monument to human defiance. On Earth, the world now knew. The panic did not vanish, but it changed shape. It mixed with a fierce, desperate pride. The secret war was a secret no longer. Commander Lee's face, from his brief transmission, was everywhere. He became the stern father of a planet under siege. The fractured governments, seeing the shield hold and a ship fall, did the only sensible thing. They gave him full control. In the bunker, the mood was one of frantic, focused pressure. The first round was a surprise. The next would not be. Valstren would adapt. He would analyze the human tactics, the kinetics, the stealth, the guerrilla warfare, and he would devise counters. Humanity had to strike a blow so profound it would crack the aliens' will to fight. Dr. Kong Ji believed she had found the key. Her lab was a chaos of wires, shattered Vesperian crystal fragments, and sonic emitters. The data from the battle was clear. Every piece of their technology, and the aliens themselves, emitted a subtle harmonic resonance, a kind of vibrational fingerprint. The shield had worked by matching and dispersing that frequency. The ground troops' resonance grenades had caused localized shattering. "It is not just a vulnerability," she explained to Lee and John, her voice hoarse but electric with excitement. A screen showed a magnified view of a Vesperian crystal shard. It is their foundation. Their power systems, their communications, their structural integrity. It is all based on maintaining a perfect, stable harmonic state. Disrupt that harmony, and they don't just malfunction. They come apart. Jun studied the data. "So we need a bigger grenade." "A much bigger grenade," G confirmed. "We need to find a way to project a disruptive resonance on a massive scale. But their ships will have dampeners, counter frequencies. A single note won't work. We need a chord, a cacophony." Lee saw it immediately. We use what we have, not as weapons, but as instruments. The plan, called Operation Shattersong, was born. It was absurd on its face. It involved not building a superweapon, but repurposing the planet itself. Teams of engineers and scientists were dispatched across the globe under heavy guard. Their targets were not military bases, but infrastructure. In the deep ocean. They attached massive emitter arrays to deep-sea communication cables, turning the sea itself into a sounding board. In the Arctic, they recalibrated long-range radar installations designed to watch for asteroids, transforming them into focused resonance projectors. In a dozen remote deserts, they pointed vast satellite communication dishes, not at the sky, but at the fleet, rewiring them to broadcast not data, but a specific, destructive set of overlapping frequencies. The most unorthodox site was in an empty stadium outside of Berlin. A team hooked up the entire concert-grade sound system, the speakers, the subwoofers, the amplifiers, to a bank of generators and a frequency modulator designed by G's team. A sound engineer, conscripted into the Defense Directorate, looked at the setup in disbelief. "You want to use this to fight aliens?" "We are going to give them a concert they will never forget," a technician replied grimly. The Vesperians were not idle. Wallström had analyzed the human tactics. He saw their reliance on ground-based launchers, their limited-range aircraft, their need for proximity. His new strategy was one of standoff obliteration. He would not engage their tricky fighters or their hidden soldiers. He would shatter their continents from a safe distance. The fleet began to reposition, moving into a higher orbit. Their largest vessels, the dreadnoughts, powering up their primary planet cracker beams. These were not surgical tools. They were instruments of planetary sterilization, meant to burn entire regions down to the mantle. The race was on. Humanity needed a single, coordinated moment. The Vesperians needed time to charge their weapons. The moment came over the Pacific. The Vesperian dreadnought Light of Certainty was the first to reach full power. It positioned itself over the Central Ocean, targeting the Ring of Fire, aiming to trigger catastrophic tectonic events that would ripple across the globe. On Earth, every resource of Operation Shattersong was ready, but scattered, untested. "We have to go now," Jun said, watching the tactical screen. "That ship is about to fire. We hit it with everything." Lee nodded. "Doctor, begin the symphony." In her lab, G took a breath and entered the final sequence. It was not a single button, but a cascade of authorizations sent across the world. Shattersong is live. All nodes fire in sequence. The attack did not look like a weapon. There was no brilliant beam, no volley of missiles. Across the planet, 100 strange installations hummed to life, drawing power from local grids, from geothermal vents, from tidal generators. Each emitted a different, powerful low-frequency pulse, a sound too deep for human ears to hear, but which traveled through rock, water, and air. The pulses converged, not on the fleet, but on a point in the upper atmosphere, directly below the Light of Certainty. They mixed and amplified each other, creating a standing wave of chaotic, disruptive resonance. To sensors, it looked like a sudden atmospheric anomaly. The dreadnought fired. A column of energy so vast, it seemed to punch a hole in the sky, descended toward the ocean. It struck the invisible, churning field of Shattersong. The effect was not an explosion, but a transformation. The coherent energy beam, hitting the dissonant resonant field, began to fray. It scattered, diffusing into a harmless shower of light and heat that boiled seawater, but did not reach the tectonic plates below. But Shattersong was not a shield. It was a weapon. The resonant wave, now charged with the dreadnought's own immense energy, rebounded upward, following the path of the beam like a lightning rod seeking the sky. It struck the Light of Certainty. On the flagship, Wallström watched as the dreadnought's perfect, harmonious energy signature on his monitor suddenly became a jagged, screaming line of discord. The ship did not explode from the outside. From within, a deep, shuddering groan vibrated through the fleet's comms. The crystalline hull of the massive vessel, a structure that had withstood asteroid impacts and plasma fires, began to vibrate. A vibration built, finding the natural resonance frequency of its own structure, and then pushing it. Past the breaking point, the light of certainty shattered. It did not blow up. It came apart like a glass sculpture hit by a precise ultrasonic hammer. Huge geometric plates of crystal sheared away from the frame. Internal lights flared and died. The immense vessel broke into a cloud of glittering dead fragments, scattering silently into the high orbit. The silence on the Vesperian command platform was absolute. Crick stood frozen, his internal light dim. The tactical display showed the symbol for the dreadnought dissolving into a cloud of debris. It was impossible. It was illogical. They had been defeated not by a superior weapon, but by noise. On Earth, in the bunker, they watched the same data. The room erupted, not in cheers, but in a stunned, collective exhale. They had gambled the planet on a theory, and it had worked. Lee did not celebrate. He saw the other dreadnoughts on the screen, their weapon signatures powering down rapidly as they scrambled to activate harmonic dampeners. The fleet was retreating to a higher orbit, clustering defensively. They were not defeated. They were shocked, hurt, and now dangerously unpredictable. "We have hurt them," Lee said, quieting the room. "We have shown them our sting can reach their heart. But a wounded animal is most dangerous. They will not try to burn us from afar now. They will come for the head of the hive." He looked at John. "They will come here. For me, for Dr. Kong, for this command center. They will try to end this with one decapitation strike. Prepare the final defenses. The battle is not over. It is coming home." Above, the Vesperian fleet reeled, its certainty shattered as completely as its dreadnought. Below, humanity braced, knowing the next attack would not be against their cities, but against their very will to fight. The war had entered its final, desperate phase. Valstran's logic was finally, brutally clear. The humans had not won a war. They had executed clever tricks. Tricks with noise, with hidden shields, with primitive kinetics. They had no fleet, no true space power. Their strength was tied to their planet, to their hidden networks, and their central command. The solution was not to fight the planet, but to cut out its brain. The Vesperian fleet, wounded and furious, consolidated. They would not fire another shot at the Earth. They would send a single, unstoppable spear directly into its heart. Aboard the remaining ships, every resource was poured into reinforcing one vessel, the Blade of Resolution, an assault carrier designed for breaching planetary fortresses. Its crystalline hull was thickened. Its harmonic dampeners were set to maximum, tuned specifically to counter the disruptive frequencies the humans had used. It would carry the High Commander himself and his entire elite guard. They would drop directly onto the coordinates of the human command bunker, confirmed by backtracking the source of their transmissions and the shield activation. They would shatter the leadership, and without its queen, the hive would fall into disarray, and surrender got in the bunker. They saw it coming. The orbital shifts were obvious. The single, heavily armored ship breaking away was a clear declaration of intent. "They are coming for us," Field Commander Jun stated, checking the power cell on his rifle. Around him, his best soldiers, those who had survived the mountain fighting, took up positions in the deep concrete corridors. They set up barricades, resonance emitters, and traps. It was a last stand, but their faces were calm. They had chosen this ground. Dr. Kang Ji worked at a terminal, her fingers flying. "Their dampeners are strong. Our portable resonators will be weaker here, underground. We will have to hit them hard, up close, to have an effect." Commander Lee stood in the center of the command room. He had sent the non-essential personnel away through deep tunnels. Only the core team remained. He looked at the faces of Ji and June, at the young officer Tae, who refused to leave his post. "This is not about holding this room," Lee said. This is about holding their attention. Every second they focus on us is a second the rest of the world is not burning. Make them fight for every meter. Outside, the sky above the mountains tore open. The blade of resolution descended like a falling star, its dampeners glowing as it pushed through the atmosphere. It ignored the few ground-to-air missiles that rose to meet it. They exploded harmlessly against its shields. It came to a hover directly over the mountain valley, and from its belly, a dozen drop pods shot out, slamming into the rocky ground around the bunker's hidden entrances. The pods cracked open, and Valsh-Tren emerged, flanked by 20 of his tallest, most formidable guards. Their crystalline bodies reflected the grim daylight, their weapons humming. They moved toward the main blast door. Inside, the battle began. Chun's soldiers fought with everything they had. Resonance grenades created pockets of shattering noise, felling several guards. Kinetic rifles fired armor-piercing rounds that chipped and cracked the alien crystal. But the Vesperians adapted. They moved in unison, their dampeners creating a localized field that weakened the human sonic weapons. Their energy beams cut through concrete and steel. They advanced, methodical and relentless, leaving shattered barricades and fallen human soldiers in their wake. Chun fought in the thick of it, his rifle hot in his hands. He fell back from corridor to corridor, making them pay. But the price was high. He watched good men and women fall. The aliens were too strong, too durable at close range with their dampeners active. In the command center, the sounds of battle grew closer, the sizzle of energy beams, the concussive thump of explosions, the sharp reports of rifle fire. The main door began to glow orange under sustained fire. G looked at Lee, the harmonic core of their ship. It's still active, a stabilizing frequency for the whole group. If we can disrupt that, how? Lee asked, his voice steady even as the door began to buckle. A feedback pulse. A massive one. But I need to link our local emitters to their own core frequency. I need them to be right here. She pointed to the floor of the command center. Lie understood. He was the bait. He looked at the failing door, then at the simple side door that led to a maintenance closet. Get in there. Seal it. Do what you need to do. She hesitated for only a second, then grabbed her tablet and dove into the closet, sealing the thick door behind her. Lee walked to his command chair and sat down. He faced the main entrance, his hands resting on the arms of the chair. With a final shriek of melting metal, the door blew inward. Valsh-Tren stepped through the smoke, his guards fanning out. The room was empty, except for the single human sitting calmly before a wall of dead screens. The Vesperian commander scanned for traps, for hidden soldiers. There were none. He moved forward, his crystalline form towering over Lee. You are the coordinator of this resistance, Valsh-Tren stated, his synthesized voice filling the quiet room. I am, Lee said, looking up at him. But you still do not understand. You came here for a leader to break. You think if I fall, the war ends. It is the logical conclusion. You are the central node. On Lee's console, a small light blinked. A signal from G. She was ready. She had linked the bunker's remaining power, and the portable emitters Chun's fallen soldiers had carried into a network. She was using the Vesperian's own dampener field as a carrier wave, tracing it back to the harmonic core of the blade still hovering above them. It was a single, fragile thread. Lee smiled a thin, cold smile. We are not a machine with a central node. We are an idea. You cannot kill an idea with a spear. He pressed a hidden button on his chair-arm. It was not a detonator. It was a signal. Outside, across the planet, every screen still functioning from phones in London to billboards in Tokyo, lit up with a live feed from the bunker's internal cameras. showing Valstren standing over Commander Lee. Lee's voice was amplified. Broadcast globally. You attacked a hive. Lee shouted, and his voice was no longer just for the alien, but for all of humanity. You see one queen? Look closer. On the screens, split-second images flashed. A farmer in Brazil rigging an old tractor engine to a sonic emitter. A student in Canada modifying a radio telescope dish. A mechanic in Nairobi repairing a damaged fighter craft. A mother in Seoul, her face smudged with dust, handing a water bottle to a tired soldier. Thousands of faces, all set with the same defiant look. Valstren's light pulsed with confusion and rage. This was illogical. This was a distraction. He raised his weapon arm to strike Lee down in the sealed closet. Ji sent the final command. She unleashed a torrent of chaotic, raw resonance, the same weaponized human noise from the first days, amplified through the bunker's emitters and piggybacking on the Vesperian's own harmonic link to their ship. The effect was instant and catastrophic. In the command room, the portable dampeners the guards carried overloaded, emitting a piercing shriek. The guards stumbled, their crystalline forms cracking under the sudden dissonance. Above, the blade of resolution shuddered as the feedback shot up the link and into its core. Its carefully balanced harmonics shattered. It lost power, its lights dying, and began a slow, graceless spiral into the distant mountains, where it exploded in a shower of broken light. Valstren, isolated from his ship's stabilizing field, felt the resonance hit him directly. Fracture lines spread across his body like spiderwebs. He looked down at his cracking form, then at the human who still sat, unwavering, before him. You are not logical, Valstren forced out, his voice glitching. No, Commander Lee said quietly, only for the alien now. We are alive. Valstren's form froze and collapsed into a pile of inert gray crystal with a sound like falling china. The silence in the room was broken by the creak of the maintenance door. Ji stepped out, her face pale. From the ruined corridor, Jun limped in, blood on his temple, supported by a soldier. They looked at the shattered remains of the Vesperian High Commander. Outside, the world watched. The last image broadcast was Commander Lee, standing up from his chair, turning to his surviving team. Not a speech of victory, but one of grim endurance. In orbit, the remaining Vesperian ships, their commander gone, their dreadnought destroyed, their logic utterly defeated, received no orders. They watched the planet below, not as a quiet prize, but as a raging, unified, and incomprehensible storm. They had come for a surrender. They had found a war without end, without rules, and without a single point of surrender to target. One by one, without a word, the glittering ships turned. They powered their engines and retreated into the deep black from which they came, leaving behind a world scarred but unbroken, a hive that had defended its queen by proving it never had just one. The war was over, not because humanity had destroyed every enemy ship, but because they had destroyed the enemy's will to fight. They had shown that some things, chaos, resilience, the collective will to live free, were weapons no logic could defend against.